Some memories never fade, no matter how much you want them to. This is the story of the day our small town high school became the center of a mystery that still haunts me to this day. I'll never forget the stranger in the hallway. It was a chilly, overcast morning, the kind where the clouds hang low and the whole world feels heavy. I was in my history class, sitting near the window and half listening to the teacher drone on about ancient wars. The school bell echoed faintly through the hallways, and everything felt routine until it didn't. Our teacher, Mr. Hayes, must have noticed too, because he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. He walked to the door and peeked through the window. I'll never forget the look on his face, like he'd just seen something that didn't belong. Without saying a word, he quickly turned the lock and stepped back. The intercom crackled, and the principal's voice came through, shaking just slightly. "This is a lockdown. Everyone stay in your classrooms and follow protocol." My heart started pounding. We all knew the drill: lights off, doors locked, hide in the corner. But this time, it wasn't a drill. The room was silent, except for the sound of our breathing. Then, we heard it, the faint echo of footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate, and growing closer. I held my breath, my eyes locked on the door. The footsteps stopped just outside. Whoever was out there wasn't in a hurry. It felt like hours passed as we waited, frozen in fear, and then nothing. The steps moved away, fading into silence. It was as if the stranger had vanished. It felt like an eternity before the police finally arrived. We heard the voices echoing through the hallways, commanding us to stay put. Eventually, they knocked on our door and escorted us out one by one. The school was searched from top to bottom, but they didn't find him. What they did find, though, still gives me chills. Muddy footprints leading from the hallway to a vent that had been pried open. How could someone fit through there? And more importantly, why? School was cancelled for the next 2 days, but when we returned, no one could focus. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said it was a drifter, others claimed it was a former student seeking revenge. A few even whispered about something supernatural. As for me, I still dream about that day. Sometimes I hear those footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing in my mind. I wonder if he'll ever come back, or if he's still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to appear again. Some mysteries are never solved, and maybe that's for the best. But one thing is certain, there are moments in life that leave a mark, moments that remind us how fragile our sense of safety truly is. What would you have done if you were there? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, stay vigilant, because you never know who or what might be watching. Some memories stay with you no matter how much time passes. For me, it's the day the unmarked van appeared at my school. I was only a kid back then, but the fear we felt that day still creeps into my dreams. This is what happened. It was a bright, ordinary afternoon. I was in 5th grade, and like every other day, recess was our chance to escape the confines of the classroom and just be kids. The playground was filled with laughter, kids swinging, running, and playing tag. I remember standing in line for the monkey bars when someone nudged me and whispered, "Look at that van." I turned to see an old unmarked van slowly circling the edge of the parking lot. It didn't seem strange at first, just a vehicle passing by, but it didn't leave. It just kept circling like a predator stalking its prey. The teachers noticed it too. Miss Carter, our recess monitor, was the first to react. She waved at the van, trying to signal the driver to move along, but it didn't stop. It just kept creeping along the edge of the lot. Finally, Miss Carter called for us to head back inside, her voice sharper than usual. The laughter stopped, and we all hurried toward the building, glancing back at the van as it slowly drove away. But even then, something about it didn't feel right. It wasn't just leaving, it was biding its time. We thought that was the end of it, but we were wrong. That afternoon, just as school was about to let out, the van came back. This time, it didn't circle the lot, it parked. I was sitting by the classroom window, watching as the driver stepped out. He was tall, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He didn't look like he belonged there, and he wasn't carrying anything. He just stood there for a moment, staring at the building. Then he started walking toward the doors. The intercom crackled, and our principal's voice came through, tense but steady. "We are initiating a lockdown. Teachers, secure your classrooms." I'll never forget the look on my teacher's face as she locked the door and pulled the blinds. We huddled together in the corner, trying not to make a sound. I could hear my own heartbeat in the silence. Outside, footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway. Someone was trying the doors. The silence was broken by the sound of sirens. The police arrived, their lights flashing through the cracks in the blinds. The driver must have seen them because the footsteps stopped, and we heard the faint sound of the doors to the parking lot slamming shut. When the officers came to our room, their faces were serious but calm. They told us it was safe to leave, but no one felt safe, not really. Outside, the van was gone. Later, we heard they found the van abandoned a few miles away. Inside, the police discovered toys, duct tape, and a notebook filled with strange, scribbled notes. I didn't understand what it meant at the time, but even as a kid, I knew it wasn't good. They never caught the driver, and no one ever came forward to claim the van. To this day, I can't look at a white van without feeling that knot of fear in my stomach. Some stories don't have an ending, and this is one of them. Who was the man in the van? What were his intentions? We'll never know, but the fear he left behind still lingers. What would you have done If this happened at your school, let me know in the comments below. And remember, always stay aware of your surroundings, because sometimes the danger is closer than you think. There are moments in life you never forget, no matter how much time passes. For me, it's the day our janitor saved us. To this day, I don't understand how he knew what he did or why, but I'll never stop being thankful. Let me take you back to that terrifying afternoon. It was a normal day at my high school. The sun was shining, the hallways buzzed with chatter, and lunch break had just ended. Then the announcement came over the intercom. This is a lockdown drill. Teachers, please initiate lockdown procedures. We didn't think much of it. Lockdown drills were routine, almost boring. My classmates and I followed the usual steps: lights off, door locked, and we all crammed into the corner, out of sight of the windows. I remember laughing quietly with my friend Jason, whispering jokes about how predictable these drills were. But then something happened that shattered that sense of safety. We heard it before we saw it, a distant, frantic yell echoing through the halls. At first, we couldn't make out the words, but the sound grew louder and more desperate. Then, through the small window on the classroom door, we saw him, Mr. Grayson, the school janitor. He was sprinting down the hallway, waving his arms and shouting, "This isn't a drill. This isn't a drill." Our teacher froze, her face turning pale. She moved quickly to double-check the lock on the door, her hands trembling. The rest of us sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what was happening. If this wasn't a drill, what was it? I don't know how he knew where to go, but Mr. Grayson seemed to have a sixth sense that day. We later learned that an intruder had entered the school, a man no one recognized, carrying a backpack and behaving erratically. But here's the strange part, Mr. Grayson had no way of knowing where the intruder was, yet he somehow managed to guide students and staff to the safest areas. He banged on doors, whispering urgently to teachers, leading them to the gymnasium and locking the doors behind them. When he reached our classroom, he looked through the window and gestured for us to stay put. His face was calm but intense, as if he knew something we didn't. We heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving down the hall. The sound grew louder, and we all held our breath, praying whoever it was wouldn't stop at our door. Then came the sound of shouting. "Police! Hands where we can see them!" We heard a scuffle, followed by silence. It was over. When the police escorted us out, we passed the intruder in handcuffs. He looked dazed, his backpack discarded on the ground. But as I glanced around, I realized Mr. Grayson was nowhere to be seen. We found him later, sitting quietly in the janitor's closet. He looked exhausted, his hands shaking slightly as he held a mug of coffee. When the principal asked how he'd known where to guide everyone, his answer was simple: "I just knew." No one questioned it. But to this day, I wonder, how did he know? He had no access to the security cameras, no way of tracking the intruder's movements. And yet, his instincts were flawless. Some say it was luck, but I think there's more to it than that. Maybe he was just in the right place at the right time, or maybe something else was guiding him. I'll never forget what Mr. Grayson did for us that day. He wasn't just a janitor, he was a hero. But the question remains, how did he know? Do you believe in intuition, or was it something more? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, stay safe and stay vigilant, because sometimes the people who protect us are the ones we least expect.